Welcome to Sermons from the Cave. Glad to have you back. We're a part of a community here, and we just love to have you show up each week. Invite your friends to check it out. We're just started the book of Genesis, and we're going to go right through the Bible. I don't know how long that's going to take, probably years, but we're going to do it. We're in chapter 1 of Genesis. We're looking at the 6 days of creation. Just a lot of exciting stuff. Just a quick recap in chapter 1, when God talks about the earth was without form and void, darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. The earth was just covered with water. There wasn't any land yet, and the Spirit was actually just right over, just hovering like a fog close to the waters. What a really interesting and intimate relationship that God was having with His creation at the very beginning. And then last time, God said, "Let there be light." He spoke. He just spoke it into existence. He spoke matter into existence. Let there be light. And He separated the darkness from the light. And time began. It said there was evening and morning the first day. So time began. Physical time began at that point. The clock started ticking. The trigger was pulled back, and time started. So now we're looking at verse 6 in chapter 1 of Genesis. It says this: "Then God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. Thus God made a firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. So evening and morning were the second day." Now, in some translations, it's an expanse. So it would read, then God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." God made the expanse and divided the waters which were under the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse. Now, listen, this is really super interesting, because a lot of questions that we're going to have later on as we go through the Bible are answered right here at the beginning in Genesis, in the beginning. And so the waters were covering the face of the earth. There wasn't any land showing. And God decided He separated the waters. He made an expanse. He just made a line somewhere in this big, giant, volume of water. He just said, okay, right here, He created a line, and He made an expanse in between the waters. Some of it was left on the earth, and some of it went up into heaven. Now, what we think, the Institute for Creation Research in San Diego, California, what we believe is that water that was brought up into the atmosphere was actually like a cushion, a filter. So it filtered out the harmful rays from the sun, and it actually made a very temperate climate on the entire globe. There wasn't going to be any winter or summer or any seasons like that. It would have just been a paradise where it wouldn't be hard to grow things, because they'd have the perfect temperature, and there wasn't even rain at this point. The Bible goes on to say, we're going to find out in the lessons to come, that a mist just rose from the earth, and it just watered all the plants and such. But it's interesting that the waters were divided, and that this firmament, this expanse, there was an expanse, and that the heavens, the globe was actually covered with this water vapor. Now, listen, I find that fascinating for several reasons. Number one is Noah's flood. Now, we know that the waters not only came, it said that it rained. We know that some of the flood waters came from the clouds, came from the earth, and it was probably a rainstorm like nobody ever saw to this day. Now, I don't care how hard it's rained in your neck of the woods. This rainstorm was catastrophic. But also, it says that waters came up from the earth, from under the earth. Now, it's interesting for several reasons. Number one is, we know from science that if you look at the globe, there's some theories out there that frankly, I don't throw out the window. I like them. Plate tectonics. I like some of the theories, some of the science that's involved in that. If you look at a map of the world, you can see how those pieces definitely fit together. And we know we know the Earth is experiencing earthquakes. We know that you can measure there's 7 major plates across the globe. We know these plates are moving. We know what direction they're moving because you can see that in the fault lines. You can actually measure that annually, and we know how much these fault lines, these plates are moving. And some are going under the ocean. Some are heading head on, like the Himalaya mountains were created that way, where 2 plates hit head on and just pushed up the Himalayan mountains. There's one off the coast of California that's going under or slipping. Actually, it's slipping sideways. That's the San Andreas Fault. We know that it builds up tension and then it gives way, and we have these massive earthquakes in California, and we're about due for one too. But what's interesting about all this is that out in the Atlantic Ocean, there's the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, this mid-mountain range out there, and it's just like you can see where it probably tore open. That's where the fountains from the deep went during the flood of Noah. Just the water that was under the crust, between the mantle and the crust. Now, the earth is made up of a very thin skin. Think of it like our skin. A very thin layer of skin called the crust. It could range anywhere from a couple miles to 70 miles thick. And underneath this crust, this very thin layer of crust, is the mantle. Now, this is the largest layer of the earth, and it's a semi-molten layer of, mostly solid, but semi-molten layer of rock. And then below that, we have a molten layer of nickel and iron, and then the inner core, which is a solid core of nickel and iron. And the design of the earth is so marvelously complex. God designed it with so many features in it that maintain our ecosystems, just the way that everything functions on the earth, that keeps this planet at the right temperature, that gives us the rotation of the earth, because we have a 24-hour day. We have just the right amount of nighttime so that we can sleep. Now, some of you have night jobs and you're off the clock, or some of you have jet lag because you travel a lot. But basically, God designed it to where we'd have just the right amount of sleep. About 8 hours of sleep per night is perfect. So God designed our world where it turns, and we have 8 hours of light and 12 hours of light and 12 hours of darkness, and so we can have time to sleep. Just everything about this world was designed, and it's just so interesting that the earth, even the earth, it has all these. Just like in the end times, when God said that there'd be the earthquakes would increase in frequency, and we wonder how that can happen. Well, in between the mantle and the crust, there's a thin layer, and I don't remember the name of it, but it's the Athenosphere, I believe, or something like that. And it's basically a layer of water and oil. This is a theory now, but basically a layer of water and oil. And what that allows to do, it allows these massive land plates to kind of float over the mantle. I mean, there's just design process. Now, folks, oil, you might be able to make oil from dead stuff, but that's not how the oil in the earth was made. God there's a system in the earth that makes oil so that it can lubricate these large plates so that they can slide. As we've been pulling the oil out of the ground, you just got to wonder if maybe that's why in the end times, as we pull more and more and more oil out of the earth, is that possible why these earthquakes are going to be becoming more frequent until we get to the day when God's going to come back for us? It says that the earth is groaning for Jesus to come back and redeem us too, and as we wait for him. So there you go. Now we've got the firmament we've got a layer of water in the atmosphere, which could account for the long lives of the early people, Adam and Eve, and their descendants, and how the ages started going down from there. I think Methuselah was the oldest person on the earth, and then as that water canopy broke from Noah's ark, from Noah's day when the flood came, and lifted the ark up, now their ages started going down because that protective layer was gone. So everything makes sense. It's a puzzle, it's a riddle, but it's totally knowable. And through the illumination of the Holy Spirit, you can understand the Bible So I want to invite you back next week to join us. Come back next week, invite your friends as we travel through the Bible. And till then, God bless you. Shalom, Mishpachah.